friends, Sheila here. One of the most common questions I hear and get from people who are new to bike touring is, how do you lock up your bike? How do you keep your bike safe when you're on the road? And I figured, while I am out here on a bike tour, I could take you through some of the scenarios and what I do. So first off, we have the camping scenario. When I am camping and I want to keep my bike safe. So the first thing that I'll look for is if there is some kind of post or something that I can lock my bike to overnight that's near my tent. So still nearby, but locked up in a way that I feel that, it can't be cut through easily and that I'd probably hear it if somebody was messing with it. But often there isn't a post. There isn't something that I can easily lock my bike to. So that is when I do this. Basically what I do is I lock my bike from the frame to one of the wheels so that somebody couldn't ride off on it. And then I also often I'll use something like this, like a secondary small cable lock. And there is a wonderful bird being wonderfully loud. Hi, buddy. I love camping. Anyway, often I will bring something like this, a secondary cable lock, that I will then connect from the bike to my tent. Basically so that if somebody starts grabbing at my bike, the tent's gonna jostle, I'm gonna feel that somebody's kind of like messing with my bike. And hopefully maybe that would, surprise them enough that they might just give up. I mean, it's hard to guess the psychology of somebody that's trying to steal your bike, but I basically try to put a couple different protection things in place so that I can feel good and then I can get a good night's sleep. Oh, and I also try to tuck it out of sight when I can. And one thing I'll also mention is that this right now, what I'm riding on, isn't the fanciest bike. And I'm not in a very populated campground. I haven't seen anybody. And so some people might feel like what I'm doing is overkill. But the system I found that works for me is I don't change my method because I feel safe. Because I might feel safe in the moment, but then I might be in my tent and be like, oh, maybe I should have put that second lock on. Or if my bike does get stolen, then I'm gonna be really upset that I judged this situation as more safe than it was. So for me, I just kind of figured out what makes me feel good, how I like to have my bike locked up, and I just always do that, even if I don't think there's a risk of it getting stolen. It only takes a moment, and it gives me peace of mind. If I'm touring with somebody else, then we'll typically lock our bikes together, making it, again, harder, hypothetically, for somebody to run away with them. And if for some reason I don't have a little cable lock like this, I'll just use, a piece of string or rope to tie the bike to the tent somehow. Okay, so in this type of situation where I'm just heading into a cafe, I'm not gonna be gone that long, I can usually keep my bike in perfectly clear sight, then this is what I do. I use this little combo lock. Could somebody cut through it super easily? Yes. Foreshadowing. Definitely, but I figure I'm always gonna be within sight. I'm always going to be checking on my bike while I'm in grabbing my coffee or whatever. So it's really more so just to make sure somebody doesn't grab my bike and run off with it. I stopped to grab a snack and my lock has rather rudely jammed. And I fought with it for 10-15 minutes, and I have finally accepted that it's just old and the numbers are jammed. So I went to the hardware store, who kindly lent me some bolt cutters. So let's see if that does the trick. I'm down a lock, but I'm free! A cautionary tale though, that bolt cutters this big can cut through a lock like this real easy. Took me 0 effort. So I definitely won't be locking up a bike with just this unless I'm gonna be real close to it. Grocery stores are one of the hardest ones, the one I look forward to the least. But usually, at least, they'll usually have a bike stand. So I have locked this up using my lock. Normally I have my secondary cable lock that I could kind of like hook through things if I wanted to like lock my panniers onto my bag, but as we saw, that had to get cut earlier today. So instead I just kind of like, I try to tuck, like, you know, like how the handles would pull the panniers off easily. I kind of just try to like tuck them underneath whatever's on my rack, and like this is kind of hard to undo if you don't know what you're doing. So I basically just try to make it so that the bags will be hard to kind of like grab and go with. And then I use my good lock to secure the bike to the actual stand. And then I try to move real fast. And I have taken all of my valuables with me. And I have tried to pick a spot where I can see my bike from inside the store. And it's kind of hard because that's not always guaranteed, but usually I try to find a spot so that I can like maybe peek out while I'm shopping. But yeah, I have all my valuables with me. Gonna go grab groceries really quickly. This is a good time to mention that I've heard a number of bike tours prefer to roll their bike right into the store. That isn't something I've done personally, but it goes to show there are a number of possible solutions and everyone finds what feels best for them. Okay, now back to speed shopping. My bike's still here, woohoo! And then the other thing I do is that normally on longer tours, I'll eventually, book into a hostel or a hotel or something, and I'll leave my bike at the hostel or hotel locked up, and then go do kind of like a big grocery shop that'll last me for a few days. But since it's a shorter tour, I'm camping the whole time, so this is what I gotta do. Well, hello there. I am back from my trip. If you want to watch the actual video about that trip, I'll leave the links below. But for now, I want to talk about one last common area of bike locking up, and that is indoor accommodations. So things like hostels, hotels, and Airbnbs. So when it comes to things like hotels or Airbnbs, I always just ask ahead of time. If I'm, booking online or calling, I just explain that I have a bike and ask if it would be okay if I bring it into the room. The vast majority of times they've been fine with this, as long as, I make sure to keep the bike as clean as possible and that I'm, respectful of the space. I'm not knocking the pedal off a door frame or something like that. I will say sometimes there can be kind of a cultural confusion depending on the place. It might seem like an odd request to ask to bring your bike into your room, but in that case, I found that I can use Google Translate, and I basically just put in, my bike is really important to me, can I please keep it in my room? And they might think I'm a little weird, but they've almost always been okay with it. When it comes to hostels, then you're in a shared accommodation, so it isn't really possible to bring a bike into that kind of shared room. However, I have found, at least in Europe, which is where I have mostly used hostels, they have almost always had a bike room, or at the very least, a kind of baggage room that can store bikes. In which case, if possible, I try to find some kind of, something firm and that can't be cut through that I can lock my bike to. That of course won't affect, the hostel's running of their business. When that isn't possible though, I go to the old standby of using my U-lock to lock the frame of my bike to my wheel so that somebody can't ride away on it. Or if I'm riding with a riding partner, we lock our bikes to each other. Only on a couple of occasions has the hostel not had some kind of indoor space for my bike, in which case, if I can't find, another accommodation to use, and it's my only option, then I try to make that outdoor locking space work. I use my U-lock and any other locks I have to basically lock up my bike as safely as possible. Which brings me to two last things, one of which is a U-lock. I travel with a U-lock. I know not everybody does. Some people think, it's too heavy, it's too cumbersome. But I heard this quote, and I wish I remembered who I heard say it. Better too much weight than not enough bicycle. And that really aligns with my philosophy, which is, something like this, it's not that big, it's not that heavy, and it just gives me peace of mind. So the one I have is like a kryptonite lock that I'll leave a link to below in case you're curious. But yeah, I would never lock up my bike in a city especially, but in a lot of different circumstances, I wouldn't lock it up without a U-lock. That's just how I feel safest. So my little U-lock comes with me on basically all my bike tours. And then the second thing I will say is that I am really mindful of anything that can be easily pulled off my bike. So lights, computer or GPS, bags, even wheels, especially wheels that have like a quick release, that like lever you pull down. It's really easy for a thief to pull a wheel off and run away with it. Seat posts with those quick releases. Quick release skewers can be swapped out for one that needs an Allen key or even a special key. So I try to make sure that anything that can be pulled off easily either comes with me or is locked to the bike. I hope you have found this helpful, but I'll just say that I'm only one person. I only have one experience, and I would really love to hear from you. What are your methods for keeping your bike safe? Leave them in the comments below. And especially if you've ever had your bike stolen, is there anything you would do differently? Is there anything you learned from that? I think it would be really helpful to create a little database of experiences in the comments so we can all learn from each other and keep our bikes as safe as possible. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.